Parliament has gone into recess for Christmas, but as I was looking over the past few weeks' debates, I noticed this little nugget that flew under my radar. The Tories have voted for more corruption. Under parliamentary rules, MPs have to declare gifts over the value of £300 in the Register of Ministerial Interest. Basically, the public can find out which businesses or people have donated to the MP. This is to avoid such instances as bribery. Now, backbench MPs don't have a great deal of power. They could approach a minister and lobby for a company in the hope their good word would hold some weight, but when they've been paid for that quiet word, it falls under a whole new level of corruption, such as the Owen Pattinson scandal. Some companies like to give gifts as a way of saying thank you. Maybe the MP has done some constituency work which resulted in a company having a boost in trade, such as securing a grant to improve their high street. And as long as everything over £300 is declared, then there can be no or very little chance of MPs being accused of taking bribes. This is the same for everyone up until 2015, when the rules were quietly changed. And now this only applies to MPs, not to government ministers.
I understand the arguments that have been made, but I don't think it washes particularly with the public. I start from three basic principles. First of all, ministers in the House of Commons owe their position to their membership of the House and are answerable to it. Secondly, all MPs should be treated equally under the rules. And thirdly, the public has the right to know, as close to real time as possible, of any financial interest that might reasonably be thought to influence an MP's speech, actions, decisions or votes. Decisions included. Since ministers actually make decisions, whereas most of us in the chamber today just talk about other people's decisions, transparency is even more important for them, I would argue, rather than less important. So it was only in 2015, really quite late in the day, quite recently, without any announcement or discussion or debate in the House, or any comment in a select committee report, that the rule was changed, granting ministers in the code of conduct of this House an exemption from registering anything that they considered they had received in a ministerial capacity.
Ministers' rules were changed. Here's Chris Bryant to explain the current minister's procedure.
Now, the theory is that, as the Leader of the House has helpfully explained today, is that in exchange for that exemption, ministers register through their department any gifts, hospitality and travel that they have received in their ministerial capacity. This is then published somewhere between 3 and 9 months later, but without the value, which is a key point, which means that a member of the public cannot judge whether the hospitality was on a scale that might reasonably be thought likely to influence ministerial decisions.
And you might not think that that's a problem. They are ministers, maybe they should have special treatment. But here's an example of why it matters.
Let me put this case to, this is not a real case, but it's a perfectly possible case. Let's say Formula One invited 2 MPs, or 3 MPs, the shadow Minister for Culture, Media and Sport, the Minister for Culture, Media and Sport, and the Chair of the Select Committee on Culture, Media and Sport. And the event was maybe, I don't know, it was a weekend, might be £2,000 for the hospitality would be the value. The Shadow Minister would have to declare it, and they might not particularly like Formula One either. They might be going because it's part of their work as, in that role. I personally can't imagine anything worse than going to a Formula One event, and I see he agrees. And the chair of the Select Committee would have to register the Formula One weekend, whereas they would have to register who would pay for it, how much it was worth, which is an important part of judging whether it might be of such a scale that it might influence a person's decision making. And furthermore, those 2 people would not then subsequently be able to lobby on behalf of Formula One. Really important part of the rules of the House. However, the minister merely tells the permanent secretary that they've been on this weekend, doesn't register the amount, the value, and it appears many months later, even though the minister might be the person who is actually making executive decisions that might affect Formula One. That's the problem. That is the fundamental problem we have. What we have at the moment is a lesser degree of transparency and openness for ministers who make decisions than for backbenchers who don't make decisions.
After saying this,
if Amendment B goes through, what he will be requiring is Members who are also ministers or envoys of some description and trade envoys will have to report in March at a pace that he knows the Whitehall machine will not currently be able to deliver on. In a few months after that point, it will.
It seems extraordinary to me that government ministers will not be able to work out for themselves, not the department, for themselves, whether they've been to an event or received hospitality which is worth more than £300 and be able to register it in 2 minutes by sending a quick email to the Registrar of Interests in the House. I simply don't understand the logistical argument that the Leader of the House is making.
The Tories voted down the amendment. This means that ministers who do have the power to change laws and policy are still not required to declare any gifts made by companies for up to a quarter of the year, and even when they do, they don't have to declare it for how much it was for. This is an open door to corruption, and the Tories seem to think this is perfectly acceptable. But what do you think? Should the government ministers have this special treatment? Or should they declare gifts in kind in the same way that backbench MPs do? Let me know down in the comments. It's right underneath that like button. And to see another form of corruption the Tories are pushing through, you need to watch this video that's on screen now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.